Hello, all. Welcome to another episode of The Manly Catholic. This is James, your host, and today we have some very special guests I'm very excited to speak with. This is Peter and Theresa Martin. Peter and Theresa, welcome to the Manly Catholic Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here.
Yes. Well, this has been a long time coming. We've had to reschedule several times due to kids or illnesses or travel schedules. So I'm glad that we finally have been able to connect. So Peter and Theresa, I'll let them explain a little bit more, but they wrote this incredible book. It's called The Rule, St. John Paul II's Rule for a Joy-Filled Marriage of Divine Love. Also founded the Wojtyla Community and Institute. Did I get that correct?
That's right, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So they, as you guys know, who have listened in the past, John Paul II was my confirmation saint. So he had a lot to say about marriage and family, which we'll be diving into tonight. But before we get into JP2, Peter and Theresa, if you could be the patron saint of anything, what would it be and why?
We would absolutely love to be the patron saints. So a married couple canonized together, like Louis and Zélie Martin, our spiritual grandparents. We'd love to be the patron saints of conjugal spirituality, and we're going to talk more about that. But basically, JP2's idea of marriage is because of the sacrament that unites us together as one, our spirituality, our interior life could be so close that it would be as if it were one. That's what JP2 calls conjugal spirituality. So we would love to be the patron saints of conjugal spirituality. And then, yeah, just that in itself would let us know that people understand what that means. Like it's a household term.
Tricky thing. Yeah, and it's a tricky thing too, because saying one interior life doesn't mean you're exactly the same.
Right.
So just as our differences physically allow us to be united physically, also that spirituality, having one interior life, doesn't mean you're like thinking the same things or the same movements, but it means that God has perfectly united you, and yet you're still distinct and actually become more. JP2 said that you don't need to fear the union. You actually become more of who you're meant to be through this union.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. Conjugal spirituality.
That's it.
That's wonderful. Well, so for those of you who maybe have no idea about what the rule is about, what is this rule? Another rule that the Catholic Church has for us. Can you guys just briefly explain to our listeners what the rule is, what it entails, and we can kind of go from there?
Yeah, it is absolutely incredible because of the fact that it was written by JP2, but then set aside, and almost like 50 years later was rediscovered. So he wrote it right after Humanae Vitae in 1968, and it wasn't discovered until they were doing his process for canonization. They had to bring out all of his writings, and they found this writing in the archives of the Archdiocese of Krakow in Poland. And somebody said, wait a minute, what is this? I've never seen this before. And it was translated by a priest and a married couple into Italian back in, 2009, but then had not been translated since then. And Theresa discovered it during her studies in her master's of theology. And I'll let you continue.
Yeah, so I was studied through Maryville Institute. It's a distance learning through England. And when I was trying to decide what to do my dissertation on, there's this lovely lady who said, I know exactly what you need to do. And she asked if I had remembered my Italian. And of course, I'm like, yeah, Paul, no, I can get by. I can read it at least. And anyway, so she went over to the bookshelf, and she got this book, and she brought it to me, and she said, this has been waiting for you. And she puts it in my hands. And looking back, we had no idea what a profound moment that was, because she's a single woman. And she said, there is a rule in here that JP2 himself wrote for married couple groups. I can't access it. You can. You're a wife, you're a mother, you can do something with this. And so I did my dissertation on it, and the whole time, so there's the rule and then two other documents also rediscovered at the same time. And we used his own words then to put flesh on this rule. And so it's not a rule like thou shalt not, right? It's more like a way of life. And for the couples that, so it was we since translated it, wrote a book, and then I basically pulled my dissertation apart and put it back together. Got the original Polish, got all the Vatican permission, all this stuff. But now our Wojtyla Community Institute, the WCI, actually supports couples who want to not just read about it, but follow this. And most of the groups say, we were kind of doing this, but this rule just gives us a little bit more structure and turns the emphasis up just a teensy bit, but it makes all the difference in the world.
So a little bit more background. JP2 was the Archbishop of Krakow in Poland at the time of the encyclical Humanae Vitae. He was very much aware of what was in Humanae Vitae, and he knew that the average married couple would potentially struggle what was in Humanae Vitae, but he also knew that this was very integral for a married couple to understand, because it was the understanding of the human person, it was the understanding of the sacrament of matrimony. And so he devised this rule to give to married couples so that they wouldn't just study the encyclical, but they would live out the truths that are in the encyclical. It's a relatively simple rule. There are 6 rules in it, and it's meant for a married couple group so that each of the couples that are in the group would start to live the truth of Humanae Vitae and not find it to be such a burden. For all of your listeners, you probably know something about Humanae Vitae and how it was not well received. Most people consider it the encyclical that says no to contraception.
Yes,
but there's so much more to it. And JP2 knew that, and he said, this is going to be the way that I bring Humanae Vitae to the people of the Archdiocese of Krakow. And so he wrote this rule. It just didn't take off. Of course, we all know that, I guess, 11 years after he became the Pope, and it just sat in the archives of Krakow.
Not even 11. I think it was like 5. It was 1984 when he
79, I think he became.
And then he wrote it.
In 68, it was written. So yeah, somewhere around 11 years. Anyway, it sat there in the archives until it was rediscovered during his canonization process. And again, translated into Italian. Theresa did her dissertation on it by translating the Italian work into English. And then we said, I can't believe this isn't in English. I graduated from the John Paul II Institute of Marriage and Family, and I kind of reached out to some of my professors saying, hey, did you guys plan on translating this? Because I don't necessarily feel equipped to do it. I expected you guys to, but they hadn't in any official way. And so we just felt God calling us to translate it and to get it out into, and to start living it.
Right.
And that was the thing that we were like, how can no one be living this? JP2 wrote it. Let's just try it. And so we started our own married couple group.
Because there's a difference between understanding why Humanae Vitae is right. And really, and what he captures too is like, it's not just a negative. It's an affirmation that God and not man is the author of life, love, and human sexuality. Like that's the point of Humanae Vitae, God and not man. And so but we can understand that, but you don't have to go very far on like NFP, groups or whatever on Facebook. Like you're there for 30 seconds, you see the disgruntled, people who are frustrated, people who are upset, and because it's hard to live out in an increasingly anti-Christian world. And so this gives us the how. This gives us the pathway to not only be able to live it, but live it with joy. And that's a real key factor that is missing a lot, because it is hard to live out in a anti-Christian world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and gosh, John Paul II, I mean, it's incredible that something like this could actually slip through the cracks if you think about it. I mean, but I feel like too, everything he's written over there, I mean, you could probably turn anything he's written into a study program, just because that man was incredible. I mean, he can, I forget how many languages did he speak, and it just, he could multitask. Yeah, he was insane. Right. But just for the record, I looked it up. John Paul II became Pope on October 16th, 1978. 78, yeah. But yeah. So for you guys, I mean, obviously you've studied so much of this, and John Paul II, one of his main, I guess, battles that he undertook was the battle for the family as well. I mean, obviously we talked about this too, but he's had so much more as well. Why do you he in particular as Pope really kind of attacked this problem that we've seen? I mean, obviously we know the things that have come about nowadays, but even when he first became Pope too, he was talking about this as well. So why do you guys think he identified this as an issue and felt like he needed to go after it?
So a simplified answer is that in his circumstances, he lived through two regimes that very much disrespected the human person. So, the Nazi regime that considered only one particular race to be the perfect race, and then the communism that considered people to be expendable, something that you could use. And so he very much saw the damage that was being done when the philosophy of the person was off. And so he knew very, very early on that no, the human person is made in God's image and likeness. There's something very particular about the human person. And so that's why he saw that I need to focus on the person. But then when, as a young priest, he was with these college students and they started to fall in love and get married. And he himself, in his threshold of hope, said, I fell in love with human love. And he recognized there was something of the divine in the love between a man and a woman. There's something incredible about this gift of human sexuality, of marriage and family. And so he particularly pointed to the way that God wanted to show himself to the world. He saw that the family was the perfect image of God, and now we know God to be Trinitarian. And in the same way that we have the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, the family has the father, the mother, and the child, and their love between the father and the mother spirates or generates a child. And he saw that to be particularly important for a world that lost the respect for who the human person was.
When he talked about God, the Trinity, as a communion of persons, right? And he says that the family is that smallest community, and that the culture passes through the family. And the strength of the family is going to come from the strength of the married couples themselves. It's funny though, because he wrote this rule for his Środowisko, his community that surrounded him, that started when he was a chaplain to college students, and then they kind of like grew with him and started having kids and whatnot. And he loved on them, and he was in their homes, he was baptizing their kids and then blessing the rooms after, it wasn't just in the church, he was everywhere. And he wrote this rule to give to them. And one of the guys from that community was the priest who rediscovered it was chatting with him and asked him, why did you guys know about this? We just rediscovered this during the cause for canonization. Nobody knew about this. And he's like, oh, yeah, we remember that when he tried to give us this thing. It was like a rule, but it reminded us of the French lay movements that were going on, and we told him we didn't want that. We have you. And so they thought, their contact with their wujek, their uncle, right? Their wujek,
Right.
Polish uncle, would solve any problem that might come up. They didn't want to formalize it. They just wanted it to be this loose network of friends, and they just want to live by the Spirit, right? With that. And so, and in his humility, what did he do? He put it on the shelf. One of the couple, so there was a priest and a married couple that wrote the Italian book on the rule. And Professor Griegel was the husband in that couple, and he was also one of the first people that JP2 hired when he started the JP2 Institute of Marriage and Family in Rome, and that was at 84. Maybe that's why 84 was in my head. But so Professor Griegel said sometimes these treasures are lost and meant to be discovered in exactly the time when they need them the most. And that's what he said about us bringing this forward. That's what he wrote on the back of our book, is that there's a reason why it was just forgotten at that time and brought out now.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's beautiful. I mean, there's so many little nuggets that are coming out from this story too. And, I know you guys touched on it kind of briefly earlier, but I really want to kind of hit the nail on the head. What makes this rule in particular so different than, I mean, because there's so many different like marriage prep books and, you know, I mean, obviously there's counseling and stuff too, but what makes John Paul II, and to make it into a joy-filled marriage too, as you mentioned earlier, Teresa, why is this so much different than all the other things that are out there?
I mean, there are a lot of wonderful things out there. So I feel like
Of
for
course.
this too, it's you got to be called to it. So it might not be for everybody, and that's totally fine too. We're definitely not the type of people to be like, since it's great for us, it must be used by everyone, right?
Right.
But I think the key that we've seen is twofold. So the main purpose of the following the rule is to build each individual's couples their conjugal spirituality. This union that we talk about, being united to your spouse, but this is like a profound union that the closer you are, the more tension and negativity and all this stuff is squeezed out.
Mm.
And so what you're left with is this grace of the sacrament of marriage and joy. And so so all that stuff is being able to be pushed out. Why? Because you have the support of these other couples walking this path with you. And so, I mean, really, he would even say there's no secret here. But
Right.
what he's doing is just turning up the focus on your marriage and then having that support. Because he said in an increasingly anti-Christian culture, we need heroic virtue to just live an ordinary Christian life. And
Right.
normally they wouldn't require heroic virtue of the ordinary Christian. But now we need it because we're being pushed so much. And that was 50 years ago when he wrote this, right? So it's even so much more now. Like it is frustrating to try to maintain heroic virtue on your own. It really is. And that's why he said, that's why you need the support of a faith-filled community around you, a community of friends, this community of this married couple group in order to support you. And that's how you can sustain this higher level of virtue needed to combat the world. So we share each other's burdens, we share each other's joys, and it just even getting it off your chest and realizing other couples have this too. Even that, you like bring it to light and Satan can't have a hold of you anymore.
And I think too that JP2 understood the person so well, and he understood God's will for marriage, that it helps us to become who we're called to be. And then our marriage, God called us together for a purpose. JP2 saw that. I think that's why he fell in love with human love, because he could see the divine action in that. And so we might think that Theresa and I met on a whim. We were studying abroad. It just so happened we fell in love. But JP2 would say, but do you think that was an accident?
Right.
Do you believe that God didn't have a plan? And then fast forward, because God knows everything, God knew that particular person would allow you to become the person that you're meant to be. And he just fell in love with this idea that God called you to be in union, not only for happiness, that joy that we are achieving, but also for the propagation of children, so that your family would grow into holiness and to receive that joy. But then also, Theresa and I have discovered that as we grow deeper in our love for one another, we are the action of God's love, and we're being healed by one another. But JP2 would say, do you really think that you're the one doing the healing? Or do you think that God is working through you to heal the other and vice versa? And it's just absolutely amazing to see.
Piggybacking on that. So the way he explains it is, so we know that the sacrament of marriage is the only sacrament that you actually confer the sacrament to each other.
Mhm.
So sometimes people say,
right.
Father Smith married us, but Pete's actions, right?
Right, so we had a bit of a technical difficulties there, good old technology, but you guys, before we had to stop, touched on a lot of really key points and very beautiful points too, because you talked about the conjugal spirituality, which sort of sets this rule apart from maybe some of the other marriage stuff out there, which there's a lot of great stuff out there as well. But, Theresa, you brought up several good points, which I wanted to ask you guys about too. And, you mentioned that, it's not just on your wedding day where you actually, with your spouse, you guys marry each other technically. But then each and every day, if you need support, you need a hug, you need, encouragement, it's actually God working through Pete and vice versa. You were, Pete working through God and things like that, which I think a lot of people underestimate, the power of their marriage as well. And, the ultimate goal is obviously what is to lead each other to heaven. Right. And to, have children, if, God blesses each marriage with children, and of course lead them to heaven as well. And I think that's such a overlooked part of our marriage, because I think a lot too in our culture, it's like, well, you get married, but you don't want to lose yourself, right? Like you don't want to lose your individuality, and you want to, keep doing your, guys' night out or whatever, which of course has its merit, but you shouldn't be golfing, 8 hours every Saturday when you have 5 kids, you're leaving home with your wife. You kind of have to make sacrifices of yourself, because
Right.
like you said too, Pete, is that's what builds you up as well, and building up that virtue is because if you don't, then you're just kind of stuck back in this immature past self, that individual self, because you're so self-centered versus looking outward. And one of you said too, and it's actually when we come closer together, that's actually when our true self is brought about.
Right.
And I think so again, so many times we're told the exact opposite, where it's like you have to work on yourself in order to improve, and then you can go into a relationship and things like that. But no, in a marriage you come together, and that's where the beauty comes in, because two imperfect people coming together. But then when you have that perfect will united, of course God's going to be at the center. And what's he going to do? He can't help with his beauty and his glory. He's just going to work through you, and that's where you guys truly blossom. I just want to kick that back to you. You guys can respond however you want, but I just really brought that out when you guys were talking about that.
And obviously we're talking to the audience that would be listening to your podcast. Who are the men that we look up to? It's those heroes that are willing to die to themselves for the sake of something that's above them, something that's outside of them. We're not really all that fond of those who are being selfish. JP2, it's in Gaudium et Spes, said that man cannot fully find himself except through a sincere gift of himself. That's who we're called to be. That's why Jesus Christ is the exemplar for manhood. He's giving himself, all of himself, for us. That's who we're called to be, is to be a gift of self for another. And that's why marriages that fall into selfish desires, that kind of, we always hear, we kind of distance ourselves, that we fell out of love. But really what happened was we stopped giving of ourselves, and we focused on giving getting things and acquiring things for ourselves, or having that golf outing more frequently. But it's dying to ourselves that truly helps us to learn who we're meant to be. And as we sacrifice
and find fulfillment.
Absolutely. The more we sacrifice for the other, the more that, especially as men, we find ourselves to be fully alive. Like, that was awesome. I mean, just think of some of the things that are popular, like the running through the mind. Dang it, I can't remember. Yeah, Ironmans, and then these difficult tasks that men take on. Why do we find that attractive? Because it's a sacrifice, and that's what we're wired to. We want to give ourselves, but we're called to give ourselves sacrifice for the other. Sometimes a greater sacrifice is staying home with the kids on a Saturday when we'd rather go fishing. But that truly helps us to become who we're called to be.
You know how he replaced golfing with fishing there. A true Wisconsin boy. That's absolutely right. And I was going to say something about that. No, I'm blanking on the giving of yourself.
See, the conjugal.
Yeah, right.
Sacrifice, build up in virtue.
No, I thought about that. But I think a lot of times we get stuck in this fearful mode of like this. We talk about this profound union. Like the first time I heard that, I was thinking, and I do not want to know what Pete's thinking all the time. I mean, we are different people here, but I think the world tells us that. Now, we are not talking about like abusive relationships or dominating relationships or whatever. But in a healthy marriage, like the other thing about this rule is that both spouses have to fully participate. right? So it's not just the wife going to a women's group where they say, okay, you've got to do this in your marriage and that'll help your marriage. Like the husband and wife together are working on their marriage, and that's when it works beautifully. And even in so we have the book, but then we also have workbooks, and we teach we have training for leader couples in order to start a group, and it walks the couples through they say that grace builds on nature, right? So what God can do with us, we still have to help along on the natural level. So even learning to communicate about our feelings, which I know is harder for men to do, but even opening up on that level allows us to approach each other and appreciate them and love them as the person they are, and not like as an object to fix or or use, or change in some way, or a problem to solve, but really just to love them where they are. And when husband and wife get to that level, then the grace can enter in and help them to learn to give more, to understand, to be a student of the other, and understand how to love, how to speak their love language more, and God can enter into that. So the beautiful thing happens when it's not a matter of I need to make sure that I get my time, it's a matter of both trying to lavish on each other this love. So I get plenty of time to myself because my husband is so kind and so loving. And like even just the other day when I had to take two kids to speech therapy, and it's the youngest two, and they were wiry and crazy. And by the time we got out of there, honestly, I was about to pull my hair out. And I get to our van, and Pete had left me a bouquet of flowers and a note. And the card basically said, I love you to the moon and back. And it was just to let me know I was loved. And that meant so much. But he's learned my love language, right? And so when you're both doing this, then you both are fulfilled, and you both have your time, and you both lavish on the other to make sure that they are fulfilled. But that's not what you're focused on, right? You're focused on
Pete, is that from the children's book with the bunnies? I love you all the way to the moon and back.
Probably,
It's just ingrained in you. You know what? We're reading that right now with my youngest, and it's in the rotation of the books. And I love you to the moon and back. And now our second oldest, he always says that too. So it's always in there.
Yeah,
But
you know how it is. This in our day and age, there's about 1,500 cards to choose from, and I only had 5 minutes, so I'm like, whatever, that one's good. It says the message that I want to send. It wasn't about the card; it was simply and that Teresa wants to praise me that I came up with that. But the idea is that when you're focused on the other, and that is your desire, God will give you that grace to say,
and the
hey,
insight.
here's an idea.
Yeah.
Teresa's in town, so she was in town where I work, and I thought it'd be great to see them, but I didn't know when the appointment was going to be done. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to do something out of the ordinary. So we didn't go through our bios, but I am a farm boy, and my father bought the farm, grew up on his own farm, and then built up this farm. And if you know anything about farmers, there's not a whole lot of time for
Affection.
Yeah, affection and that kind of love. And so this is really out of my wheelhouse. I'm not used to this, but it came to mind that you should do something while she's in town. And that was talk about grace building on nature. You mentioned, James, how the sacrament offers the grace at all times. So our sacrament and the sacrament of holy orders, they aren't like confession where you go in and you receive the grace, and that grace is with you but it's a sacrament of vocation, so that it's available at all times. I have a brother that's a priest, and he tells stories all the time about how I didn't have anything left to give, but God worked through me at that moment. And it's the same thing in our marriage when kids are sick, or when you're tired from work and you get home and you're like, okay, yeah, I can do this. I'll put away dishes while you put your feet up or whatever. It's the same blessing that we receive the grace continually so that we can be a gift to the other.
Yeah, and it's, you move beyond the who's right to just who can love each other more,
Right.
I was just sharing about, we were participating in the Eucharistic pilgrimage by
Oh, yeah.
going to Rochester, where they had a mass at the Civic Center there. And so Peter and I have 8 amazing children, but we've also lost 7 who died before they were born. And some of the experiences were more tragic than others. And so even though I'm outwardly mostly an upbeat person and positive person, I do suffer from this anxiety that's similar to post-traumatic stress anxiety that pops up when I least expect it, or when there's a situation of like the child loss kind of trigger. So whenever we're in a big crowd, the anxiety can be, and then we're trying to make sure that all 8 kids stay in with us, and nobody
Right.
gets lost. And yeah, so that it can start to swell. And 2 of our kids stopped to go. We were leaving the Civic Center. This was just on Sunday. And 2 of our kids stopped to go to the bathroom. And Pete knew, like, one of them was 17 and the other one was 9. And I just wasn't sure that they'd be able to get out and make it back to the van. And I was starting to be anxious, and Pete was 100% sure that they would have made it to the van, but he didn't sit there and argue with me. He didn't say, you're being irrational, they're going to be fine, just come on. He said, I'll stay, I'll wait for them, you go with the rest of the kids. And that, like, I got back in the van, and he was like, it's no big deal. And they caught up with us and we all got in the van, and I was like, you don't understand what that meant to me. Because, like, and even think about it now, like, I get teared up because earlier in our marriage, in a different place in our marriage, he might have argued, might have stopped, we might have had a little fight, and I was getting anxious, and but he wasn't, you know what I mean? We were just arguing
Right.
about whether the kids would get back to the van, but that wasn't what it was about. And he recognized that, and he addressed that, and he stayed because he loved me and wanted to put my heart at ease. He had no worries that the kids would get to the van, but it was just
Yeah.
that choice of, I don't care if I'm right or not right. I want to love my wife in this moment. And he knows that's what I suffer from. So yeah, it's finding all those little things,
Yeah, no, it really is profound too, because this is kind of a funny story, but it ties in nicely. I forget I think they're a married couple, whether I think they're psychologists or something. My wife and I were listening to a talk by them, and they said, they're talking about men and women's brains. Like the waffle square is a man's brain, and like the spaghetti is the woman's.
Right.
And it's funny because my wife, she goes, "Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense." And now one of the running jokes that we have is like, if I'm doing something, she goes, "Jump out of that waffle square and get into the one over here, because I need you to do this right now." Because for men, it's a lot harder for us to kind of stop and then get to the next thing, because we're just, nope, I'm in the square. But no, it's recognizing that, because she then realized, like, that's not something that you're meaning to do. It's that's just how you are. And now she's learned to kind of appreciate that. Now it's kind of a running joke, but but like you said,
and not be insulted or think you're trying to be mean or don't.
Right. Yeah, it's like, no, I'm not.
That's just how your brain works.
Yeah, it's like it takes me longer to get out of this, to get to that. So if I'm a little bit delayed, it's not because I'm like, oh, I didn't want to do what you wanted me to do, but because like you said, with Peter, maybe he would have reacted differently earlier in the marriage. And same thing with me, with my wife as well, because she has ADHD, and she's like constantly losing car keys and stuff, and I used to get kind of like really flustered with her, and now I'm just like, honey, that's just how you are. I've learned to accept it. It's like she lost them yesterday. I'm like, it's not a big deal. It's gonna be fine. We're gonna find them, and we ended up finding them. But and again, it's that grace of coming together, like you said, and you get that, Peter. I think you said it, is you get almost like that insight too. It's maybe something that's not natural to you, but you recognize, oh, this is what my wife needs right now. This is what she's even though I want to say this, but I am going to reserve that because she doesn't need that right now. Even if I am 100% right, that doesn't really, it doesn't matter if you're right or not.
That's right.
It's what does my spouse need? Because if we are united together, then obviously that can do nothing but build us up and help us grow as a couple.
And none of us are perfect, and a lot of us have to learn by experience that, you know what, I might have won the battle, but in the end, I
We
still
both
lost.
lost. You
Yeah,
know, when anybody,
exactly.
yeah, when
That
anyone
great, you
wins.
won. Here's your little medal. Good
Yeah.
job, put it on your chest. But you're in a worse situation than you would have been had you just died to yourself. And that's the
Right.
beautiful thing. And I think JP2 saw that was dying to yourself is the ultimate way to be a man. And not only did he teach it, but he lived it. I mean, how many of us got to see him in his dying
Mm.
years in a very humbling state?
But
And yet, how many of us were completely impressed with this man who was continuing in his old age without worry of how he looks? It was just, yeah, a great
Well,
gift.
and I think a lot of us have gone to Theology of the Body talks or even done like a marriage study or something, and it's great and it's fulfilling. But then that's it. And you go back home and the kids are getting into trouble and, you know, dinner needs to be made and bills need to be paid. And you get all caught up in the everyday messy parts of life that all those beautiful things you just learned about the sacrament of marriage, like just go right out the window, right?
Right.
Like you don't have time to
Right.
focus on that. You got to change a diaper. You got to, you know, get somebody ready for school, whatever. And, you know, do his homework for him or something. But, you know, like, so what the rule does and being a part of these married couple group, it just helps you keep that focus turned up just a little bit more
Right.
so that your marriage is your main priority.
Hmm.
And that it's because it should be like you will be a better father, a better mother, the more you love your spouse better, the stronger that your marriage is. And the kids see that. Although they haven't expressed it in the same way until we had our daughter. So she's second to last, second to youngest. She's just turned 7. And every time Peter and I kiss, she claps. She does her own little applause. And then now Charlie has joined in too. And it's cute, but it's like it actually, the other boys smirk, you know, they're just like,
Right.
oh, they're
Of
gonna,
course.
you know, but it's just cute because she's like, I love it that you love, you know, but that's actually, you know, it's a very
That's
girl
adorable.
thing, but I think it gives all children security when they see that their parents love each other and that nothing's going to happen to that anchor in their life.
Yeah.
Gosh, yeah, that is so huge because so many children don't have that. You know,
Yeah.
and exactly what you said. If they have that anchor, it's like, okay, no matter what's going on, at least I know I can come home. I have a mom and a dad who love each other.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, again, you don't know what your kids notice, you know,
Yeah.
and just like your daughter, like you said, you didn't know until your daughter, you know, has grown up and then she claps, you know, and the boys recognize that too, of course. Maybe they haven't, you know, said it out loud, but you know, they are observing that as well, what you guys are doing together. And I did want to ask you guys more too about the Wojtyla Community Institute, because you know it's a group for married couples as well. But can you guys just dive into that a little bit more? What does it entail? What does it look like? How do you kind of start your own if there's nothing in your area?
Yep, exactly. So that's why we started it. So we knew that, you know, starting and running a married couple group wasn't going to be easy. We did one ourselves, and we knew there was a lot of steps involved for
We thought
someone.
it was like self-explanatory. We were
thought
just
it
like,
was-
let's do this.
That's gonna be
And then
easy.
I know it was easy for us because we had been studying it, but everyone else was like, you're going to have to write this down. So we had a wonderful group that was like a guinea pig. Sorry. I just want to say real quick, jp2rule.com. Everything that Pete's about to explain, you can find there, jp2rule.com, and you can use the number 2 or it'll get you there.
All right. So
Go ahead.
Excellent.
no, so we discovered that, okay, if we're going to have people read the book, learn about the rule, we want them to start their own married couple groups because we've seen the fruit that comes out of it. And so we created the Wojtyla Community Institute to give them the tools that are needed to start a married couple group. So if someone's interested, they've read the book and they're like, this is something I feel called to, we've got leader couple trainings that we offer for that couple who says, I want this and I want to have others living this with me. So they'll go through the training, and
And we got over 30 leader couples trained
we'll
in
coach
16 states.
we'll coach them on all aspects, and then they'll start their own group and be able to live the rule in their own community. We've got groups starting in 16 different states, but there might not be one near you. And it's not the type of thing that you can just join into, which is why normally a leader couple is needed to kind of start a new group. But if there are groups in an area, that's very beneficial, because one of the things that we do is a community gathering where our families will all come together for a meal and for prayer and
invite others.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a
Oh,
couple.
great.
I'm sorry. Maybe there's a couple who isn't ready yet to join a group because of the higher commitment, but they still want to be a part. And this is one of the parts of the rule is having an apostolate, is giving out. He did not want these groups to be cliques. So the community gathering offers us an opportunity to not only share our children with the other married couples who are in the group, right, and get to know their families, because he said that these communities should be like a seminary for marriage. And so how can that happen unless the children are learning from other marriages and seeing that example, but then also to the wider community as a whole. So maybe people who aren't ready yet to be in a married couple group themselves are still getting the benefit of this beautiful community of families that are all focused together on living an authentically Christian life.
Yeah, so that's the reason that we formed the nonprofit, was so that we could share the rule with others and help them to form their own groups. And we've had great success. And the beautiful thing is both Teresa and I, we recognize this is God's calling. This is his vocation for us. He's advocating and pushing this forward. So everyone that comes to us has already been called. And there's probably listeners that said, wow, that's exactly what we're looking for. And that's how to us couples who say, okay, this is so weird because
the Holy Spirit was telling me this same exact thing.
I felt that this is what I need, and tell me what I need to do. And so we'll put them through a leadership training. And we also feel that since this was a gift to us, that we're simply giving it to others. So of course there's a cost involved, but we're not making any money
in printing the material, but we don't.
Our nonprofit is really not profitable in the sense that
really not profitable.
It's everything that you're
and Pete he just finished mowing the lawn, and the thing is like barely working, but we don't have extra income. But that's okay. We're so blessed to be.
We got duct tape.
Yeah, absolutely.
We just passed the feast of the visitation on May 31st.
Yes.
And Bishop Barron talks about that moment in Mary's life when she finds out her part in God's great theodrama, right? Her part in God's plan. She goes in haste.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's where this mission is for us. It's like we felt called to serve marriage and family since we got married. Like we studied in Rome when we were first married, and we've already given our lives to this, but now God has given us, and Papa JP too has given us this rule. And so we go in haste, just share it into. We've been, speaking, and we're happy to come speak wherever people want us to come. But we'll be going down to Indiana, and we're leading a retreat in North Dakota in November. We'll be doing a retreat in La Crosse this summer, and and Winona and all over the place.
And it has its own rewards. We get to have a front row seat in the genius of JP2, and we get to see these couples truly growing in their marriage, but then exuding joy. It's so much fun. So fun. In our area, so we live near Winona, Minnesota, there are now 3 groups, and so our community gathering is expanding. But it's so much fun to see these young couples and their joy, because you know how it is. You probably have talked about this. The younger generation doesn't have community really at all, other than social networking, which is not so social, as you know. Yeah. So they just eat it up. They're like, I've never had this.
One of the things so there's a workbook that they follow that the group follows. So each chapter is like the next time they get together, and that workbook takes you through a year. So that's the commitment, is to commit to be a part of a group for a year at a time. Even though JP2 had this vision that this would be a lifelong commitment,
Right.
like
Right.
we understand that people can only commit a year at a time, but each time we get together with your married couple group, it ends with a conjugal spirituality challenge. And some of these are like a deeper dialogue type of, it's a type of communication tool to speak at that deeper level, but some of them are lighter and are just have fun with your spouse, or plan a special date night this week, or
just make your spouse smile.
So it was really sweet, because we even had one of these every couples from a different group come up to us at some event we were at and tell us what they did this week to meet the challenge and how fun it was. And they were doing this like little tag team race thing, and their son was cheering them on. And it was just it was like their own unique thing. But even telling us the story, they were like, we've never done that before. And it was so great. And it was
honestly, the joy that they had, it was like we met them on their honeymoon. It was so adorable, because we're like, what the heck? We're just like, praise God. Is
him. Like, it's just, we're just
that a couple is so in love.
Our little part in
right, and so we get to we get to hear these glory stories, and it's just great. We attribute all of it to JP2,
and Jesus.
If people say that this
JP2 and Jesus,
if people say this is Peter and Theresa Martin's thing, we're like, no, it's not. I mean, it was given to us. It's a gift.
We're like the secretaries.
Yeah, we're just
making
there
it
you
happen.
go.
Yeah,
right. The messengers.
Yeah,
I love that. Well, guys, thank you so much for all your work. Thank you for, bringing married couples together like this and hearing that joy, those joyful stories. I'm sure that just helps drive you each and every day.
Yeah.
So as we close out, I want to ask you guys, what is maybe some parting wisdom that you can have for some married couples out there as we close this up?
I would say, consider this. God planned for you and your spouse to be together before you even met, because he knew that in creating you, this would be the way that the plan he has for you would be fulfilled. So don't just discount it as, well, it's comfortable, or it's, this is how you have two incomes and this is how we live. No, this is how God wants you to become a saint, how your wife will become a saint, how your children will become saints, how you will be with God in heaven. He planned all of this out ahead of time.
Yeah. So what story does the author of Life, Love, and Human Sexuality want to keep writing with your marriage? Yeah, and the other thing is to just understand that when you want to grow in unity, when you want to grow in healing, that sometimes you have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable in order to get there, right? So sometimes when you are on this journey of healing, the journey, it can be hard. And yes, you get to these plateaus and you get to these moments of joy and but then sometimes when you're dialoguing, when you're entering into this deeper understanding, you have to be brave enough to be vulnerable with your spouse, and brave enough to share those feelings and those thoughts that you think they're not going to like. And because only when you share all of that, and maybe there will be some emotions or reactions or whatever, that's okay. Because when you're brave enough to be vulnerable and share all of that, then God can heal it and take you to another place, and a place full of joy. And we are so grateful. I mean, Pete talked about the joy of being able to see other people. And for us, it feels like a selfish ministry a lot of the times, because we have reaped the benefit of, we had a great marriage by all standards, we work in marriage ministry. We are intentional with our communication, working on it a lot. But being in a married couple group these last 4 years has made an amazing, tremendous difference in our joy and in our union.
Well, you guys, thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you for coming on to the podcast. We really hope all of you have enjoyed listening. And I will leave link to the book. I put down jp2rule.com, and then also to the Wojtyla Community Institute as well. But again, thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you all so much for listening. Until next time, go out there and be a saint. Perfect. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on and being flexible and
Yeah,
all the emails back and forth.
Finally happened.
You've
Finally happened. We made it happen.
and you've been doing this long enough to know that when there are hiccups like this, they're not.
Means God is in it and Satan is against
It's
it.
not just
Yes.
some dumb coincidence. There's other things happening here.
Right. Well, I was looking actually, Peter, at our email exchange, and I forgot who even introduced us originally, but it was like 37 emails later. And it's like, hey,
37.
that's persistence
Kevin
right there.
Yeah.
Kevin, that's who it was. Yes. Yeah, because he said, like, yeah, I listened to the podcast, and I think this would be great for you guys. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. John Paul II. What more can you want? Marriage?
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, take that, Satan.
We did it.
Now, Peter, have you always worked with Bishop Barron, or is
No,
that
so,
is that your new role? I think you mentioned that in one of your emails.
So I got hired at the Diocese of Winona, Rochester, 12 years ago. Yeah, now just 14 years ago, and worked for Bishop Quinn for all those years, and then we just out of some. I won't call it dumb luck because I know that it's providence.
It was
That man right there. That man right there.
Robert Barron
became our new bishop, and so became Pete's boss.
So for
you go.
Almost 2 years now, he was 2. He was installed. Gosh, right around. No, it was the Feast of Martha and Lazarus.
The actual installation was in July.
Yeah. So
because you couldn't come hear me talk at the Chastain conference, remember?
He's been there 2 years already?
Yeah, coming up on 2.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Yeah.
I remember that too. Yeah. I was like, oh, he's moving. I grew up in California. So when he talked about he's in Santa Barbara, I'm like, you're slumming it up in Santa Barbara, Bishop Barron. Just terrible Santa Barbara weather and all that.
Then he had to come to Minnesota.
He came to Minnesota. It's a little bit different.
I know.
Oh, is it really?
The sad thing is like sometimes people go like help meet Bishop at a parish, and these ladies, they don't even know who he is. Like he's so popular all throughout the whole world, and then he's in his own diocese, and they're like, "Hi, Father!" Like they don't even know he's the new bishop.
Thank you, Father, for coming. We're so grateful. I'm Bishop. Sorry,
and like
they don't know who he is.
No, it's
hilarious.
He's so good.
He's very personal.
I'm so impressed.
He seems like he would be.
So impressed by him because, I mean, probably like most of the world, I only knew him by his videos.
Yeah, Word on Fire.
You know, and sometimes you can meet these people in person who you've seen online, and just the warmness or the openness.
It's not quite there.
It's not the same.
But not with this guy.
But with Bishop Barron, he is now he might not remember your name from event to event, but he is always open and listening and ready to like dive into deep conversation with every person who shakes his hand.
We have a good friend, priest. He's the vocations director, and he said, and I think this is a perfect description. He said, I think God just gave him an extra dose of generosity.
Of goodwill.
Yeah.
Of goodwill. He just has a wonderful heart.
Yeah.
That's awesome to hear.
Like I said at the beginning, when I screwed up, it was so humiliating, but I called right away. I'm like, I'm going to be a man about this, and I'm just going to man up and say, listen, I screwed up. I didn't get any of the audio, and I'm sorry. And that's just going to have to be the way it is. And
he didn't blame anybody else.
No, we'll just do it again. It's fine. These things happen. Oh,
so great.
Thank the Lord.
Yeah.
Seriously, I'm like, oh, dear Lord. Because I was sweating making that phone call. I'm like, man. But yeah,
fire me for sure.
No, I'd have been happy to be fired because I'm not a communications director. I was just generous, and I said, "Sure, I'll take it over. I'll do it. Whatever."
That's crazy. Just like, oh, I don't know anything about communications, but sure, someone needs to step up. I mean, I'll do it.
Because it happened before Bishop Barron.
It worked just fine.
We had like a nobody bishop. Not a nobody bishop, but
I know what you mean. It's not Bishop Barron. Yeah,
exactly. And the first time,
small diocese. It's not
first time I walked down with the camera to go video Bishop, we had to do some small video. Kids, I laughed out loud, and I'm like, God, this is funny. You took a farm kid out of Wisconsin, and you're gonna set him up behind the camera with Bishop Barron. Now this is hilarious.
Well, and then the Lightning McQueen, the Cars movie.
Oh yeah.
He's
Oh yeah.
so Pete Conley was saying the whole first year, Bishop Barron knows my name. Bishop Barron knows my name. And then he would just stop at it, like one evening, he'll be like, I got another personal email from Bishop Barron.
Right, because of course we always get the daily emails with the gospel reflections, like
Right.
most of the Catholic world.
Yes. No, honey,
You're-
this is
Peter,
personal.
can you do this for me, Peter?
So you're like Mater, Peter. You're like Mater.
Yeah,
And he's Lightning McQueen.
that's how I have to, because I mean, I got a license in theology, but like in Bishop Barron world, that's like you graduated from the 6th grade. Like it's not even close.
However, us spending time in Europe actually made us meet and be friends with some of his
Friends, yeah, that's helpful.
so that
Oh,
was,
really?
that was helpful. Although I think
Mhm.
we told him the same story a few times, and he's impressed every time. So that's fun. It's all good. It's all good.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again, you guys. I really appreciate it. And thank you for this book. This book is great. I haven't gone through all of it, but from what I've read, I'm excited to read more through it.
Well, our
So.
next leader couple training is in September. So if you feel inspired, reach out.
Where are you guys doing it?
It's on the training itself is online.
Oh, well, that's cool to know.
Yeah, and
And-
the training is like, what do we charge? $55.
But it's basically paying for the box of
Yeah,
stuff.
and everyone is
Okay.
like, dude, you can't do
You
that.
should train more. You should charge more.
Yes, people are charging like $600 to be trained, and we're like,
But I'm like, but that's not what it's about.
Yeah,
"It'll be fine."
right.
God will take care of us.
Yeah,
I
Exactly.
want it to be accessible.
yeah, exactly. We want these couples to start their married couple group. We don't want them to have to go out and fundraise.
It's all good. And JP2 wouldn't want that.
The money will come somehow.
Keep asking JP2.
Yeah.
And then you guys are speaking in Indiana, you said, coming up?
In
Yeah.
2 different places. So the first weekend in Indiana, we're speaking near Indianapolis in Greenwood at their Celebrate Marriage conference. And
Okay.
then at the end of September, we're speaking for the Magisters, All Saints. Where is
Guilford or
it? Guilford.
something.
At their
Okay.
Yeah,
they have like a annual marriage date night or something.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, nice. Do you guys ever come up to Michigan?
Where are you in Michigan?
We're
Grand Rapids.
No,
we'll come anywhere anyone invites.
we haven't yet, but
We'll
I
have
spent
we'll have to
many
invite
years
you.
in seminary, and so we're slowly kind of branching out amongst the classmates. Just say, hey, this is a great way to strengthen your marriages and your parishes. But it's just us. There's others that are helping us, but as far as like the speaking, it's just us, and we still have to take care of our kids. So it's not like we're just
Sure.
going out on a speaking.
Right.
tour.
Although that would be
Not-
fun. We are taking our kids. So we have a Ford Transit, a mid-roof Ford Transit.
Oh, yes.
So it's
Yeah.
very comfy.
Yeah.
And the second time he's pickier about comfort. The second time we go down, well, he drives and I can put my seat off.
Yeah, right.
There, now it's coming out. All right, there, now we
I
understand.
watch movies and I'm like half watching it, and Pizza has to be the driver, so that's why he doesn't enjoy it. But the second time we go down to Indiana, we're going for the whole weekend, and the kids are all coming with us, and we're staying in they have it's a tri-parish, and the priest was a buddy of ours from college who's bringing us down there, and he had so he's in charge of 3 churches, like one parish, but they rotate the masses.
Oh,
and
gotcha.
one of the old rectories, they transformed into a guest house, so we're gonna stay there. It's like
Oh.
a 9-hour drive, but then we're gonna stay there with the whole weekend for the
Oh,
kids.
that'll be fun.
Yeah, we try in this work that we do. We try to make sure that the family is involved so that it doesn't detract from our.
And they helped me pack the boxes for the new married couple
Oh, that's
group.
cool.
One kid is
That's
our
great.
database administrator.
And we bring 2, as long as it's close enough, we'll bring 2 along to man our table and sell books and candles
Yeah.
and mugs for us when we go give talks.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's fun.
it is.
It's a family thing.
That's wonderful. I love that. How do you do we just find you guys on your website to book a speaking engagement? And
Yeah,
okay.
it says one of the tabs says speaking, and there's a form.
Oh, there it is. It's literally right there.
Wait, so
Speaking.
Grand
Okay.
Rapids, is that Bruce? Bishop Bruce? What do you have?
Oh,
in-
no. Wachovia. Bishop
Oh, yeah.
Wachovia.
Korea. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been here for a while, I think.
Yeah.
We moved here in 2020. I did. Yeah. We were living in California before that.
Oh, were you? Okay. The guy before that, I think, had a reputation of being not so conservative. Yeah.
How many kids do you have, James? I'm sorry, I didn't ask.
We have 4. Yeah, so we have 5, 3, and twins. The twin girls are 16 months.
What? Oh, baby.
Yeah,
Oh,
babies. Those little nuggets.
and
but
your
yeah,
5 and 3-year-old are those boys?
Yes, they are boys. Mm-hmm.
Lovely.
Yeah, so they're keeping us busy right now.
Fun.
I'm sure
It is. It's the best.
Our daughter would have loved to have had a sister right away.
Yes.
She always complains about that she doesn't have a sister. I'm like, but then you get to be the princess.
That is true. She
So,
does
like,
get to be the
But
princess.
yeah, she's like, and she's spoiled. Like, she's the only one of all the kids who has a queen size bed because she has her own room now that she's.
Yes.
And yet she ends up sleeping on the floor in our room, our bed.
Yeah, makes sense. Perfect sense. Like, honey, you have a queen bed. I know.
Right.
I like
Why
it.
don't you sleep in it?
I like the floor better. Yeah.
She
Well, and she has